Today's digital workshop is Digital Wellness Series, Workshop 2, Digital Etiquette and Online Communication. I'm excited to introduce you to Emmy, Hilliard, BFN Co-Director of Family Support Health and Grow Digital Skills Coordinator. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Marie. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And can you see this okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for inviting me to share on this really important topic, guiding your child's digital journey. One of the things that I think parents always can use some connection and support around is navigating this digital landscape with our children, and it's best to do this together. So the intention behind this workshop is to foster positive online experience, address cyberbullying, and just in general, the focus is really on nurturing digital empathy. And so one of the things that I think we can do in talking about this is, first of all, going over our agenda. I have a lot of different topics that come up with the digital etiquette and digital empathy, but we're going to focus on a few main ones. And we'll go to cyberbullying support, and then we'll talk more about what it means to foster digital empathy. So most often, parent concerns tend to center around cyberbullying and online harassment and the supports to fight back against that, excessive screen time, oversharing of personal information, and exposure to inappropriate content. We're going to address some of those concerns in this workshop today. But first, let's go ahead and reset some boundaries about what the digital landscape today can provide, because we can hold space for the opportunities that this landscape provides while also recognizing and finding ways to address challenges. Opportunities that we find in the digital landscape, not only for us as parents, but also for our children, is that global connectivity, right? More access to more wonderful opportunities through this digital technology, the access to more information than ever before in human history, creative expression, skill development, and the challenges with that is, of course, privacy concerns, cyberbullying, digital addiction, which is a real thing, and then, of course, misinformation. So when we talk about teaching digital etiquette with our families, one of the things that we want to always try to do is keep our questions open-ended. Like, what do you like to share online and why? It's about always fostering connection more so than correction. Because what we want to do as we're teaching this skill set to our kiddos is make sure that they understand the rules around seeking understanding. So help me to understand, what do you enjoy about this app? Or exploring the motivations behind their behaviors or behind their wants. How do you decide what to post is another good one. And also then discussing consequences, like what might actually happen if somebody shared private information. So something to keep in mind, especially when we're talking to our teenagers about their digital habits, is avoiding that lecture mode that we as parents tend to kind of default to. Instead of saying just flat out, don't post inappropriate things. They've heard that many times before. You're spending too much time online. Try something like, let's talk about what you'd like to share online. What's your favorite part of this game? What is it that you love? Seeking to understand is going to be able to produce a lot more thoughtful conversations that will help them manage the upcoming conversations ahead. So when we talk about preventative strategies for positive online behavior, it's really important that we set some of these expectations early, right? Preferably before we give out devices, establishing clear guidelines before kiddos have access to some of these tools that enable them to have access is always a good idea, but it's never too late. So you can always reestablish clear boundaries around these devices because they still are a privilege to use. The other great idea that a lot of specialists recommend is creating family tech agreements. Much like you would have family agreements around expectations about getting home on time or bedtime behavior, the same can be said about tech agreements. You can collaborate together and develop rules for device use and online behavior. And again, going back into the early expectation conversation, they go hand in hand in a way that can set boundaries in a healthy way for everybody in the family. Also, leading by example. This, of course, is the hardest one, but truly one of the most important considerations. By modeling as a parent responsible digital habits in our own online interactions, that is one of the best ways that we can shape and set good boundaries for our children. Also, regular check-ins are encouraged. Having open and non-judgmental conversations around online experiences regularly is encouraged because it's so much a part of our life right now. It's really a good idea to start having these conversations sooner. So when we go back to thinking about age-appropriate digital boundaries, for the purposes of this presentation, started with age 6 and 9. A question that often comes up is like, my kiddo is 3 years old and has an iPad. That's fine. That's fine. It's all about what works for your family and the boundaries that you have. There's nothing wrong with that. Just keeping in mind some of the recommendations around supervised access and making sure that the apps that your kiddo is using are kid-friendly apps, and time limits therein is just going to be a really important component of what works for your family. So these are the recommendations as a kind of foundational work that you can use to build what works for your own family. So ages 6 to 9, supervised access, kid-friendly apps, time limits. Ages 10 to 12, that's when potentially some parents like to introduce social media. A lot of clubs at school tend to have Facebook pages. This is a good time to discuss privacy and to really hone in on monitoring activity. Ages 13 and 15, increased autonomy is often desired, ongoing dialogue, privacy settings review. All of these things really coalesce together. And age 16 and up, that's when hopefully all the good progress of talking to kiddos starting at age 6, it really comes together, and that open line of communication is there, that trust building is there, and then preparing for adult digital life and all the consequences therein. This is just a very gentle roadmap to give you a starting place of what digital boundaries could look like. Just a couple topics that you can start some of these conversations with. So how do we recognize signs of cyberbullying? This is a really important thing for us as parents to be educated on. It can look different for every child, but a lot of common things to look for are sudden avoidance of social situations or device use, anxiety or distress when receiving messages, also changes in sleeping patterns or appetite. Declining grades, loss of interest, and other offline activities are also a common sign. And it's just a good thing for you to be aware that these are some of the most recognized patterns. They're not all inclusive, but these are some of the most prominent ones to be watchful for. Bless you. So if you discover cyberbullying in the home, one of the things that you can do is to first and foremost listen without judgment. Creating a safe space for your child to share their experiences is, again, going to be modeling that good digital behavior and reactive behavior. Documenting everything is a really important consideration here, because as much as it's difficult to talk about, it's really important that you're taking screenshots, you're noting dates, you're saving messages as evidence. We don't want anything to escalate, but this is a really important thing. One of those tools that you would rather have and not need than need and not have access to. Contact appropriate authorities, reach out to school officials, platform moderators, law enforcement. Always a good idea to reach out to your school and find out what are their digital expectations. Most schools now pass out digital agreements when it comes to devices. It would be a good idea to check around that and make sure that you're aware of what your child is being exposed to and the rules around devices at the school. Prioritize emotional support. Focus on your child's well-being before addressing rules or consequences. And then develop that action plan together. This goes back into the idea of creating a family agreement around digital technology. collaborating with your child on next steps and coping strategies. So we have very few tools right now in the digital landscape because unfortunately, not only as parents are we users of this technology, but we're also regulators too. And that's unfortunate. It is changing slowly. Europe has a lot of wonderful regulations right now that are seeking to add some benefits and some muscles to what parents can utilize when it comes to tech. And I just heard a story about Australia trying to incorporate some really good parental controls with their technologies as well. We don't have anything like that now. So I want to be clear about the onus, unfortunately, being on the parent. And that means that educating yourself around stuff like these tools is especially important for you to be aware of. So I'm just going to run through a brief little overview of what we have available. This is not all encompassing. This is just a good place for you to start. So you have some general awareness. Software tools, there's applications that you can get like Net Nanny and Qustodio. And what this does is this is a tool that provides monitoring and filtering. So it will actually give you some control over the internet access that is on your child's device or your home device. And of course, we have settings already that are baked into a lot of the hardware, like on the Apple phones or on Androids, iPads, those kind of things. Those automatically restrict screen time as well. And there's a lot that is available. That's the good news. There's also separate tools that can allow you to monitor online activity. So you can actually track the sites that your kiddos are having access to in an effort to keep them safe. And then, of course, screen time management. This is also good for us as adults. Establishing balanced digital lifestyles, ensuring healthier sleep cycles, reducing eye strain. That's becoming a real thing now. A mix of digital and physical activities is always a good idea. And a tool like this can really help to lower the risk of addiction and help to add that work-life balance and digital balance that we just don't talk about enough. To my okay. So when we're talking about balancing parental controls and trust, that's so important to have for us as parents. Some of the monitoring tools that I was just referencing on the earlier screen, like screen time trackers and content filters, there's also location sharing. It's also really good to kind of hold space for that balance. It's a very delicate balance, but I think we have to call out how important it is to have this balance because you also want to build trust while you have these monitoring tools. And really, this is uncharted territory. This is really a first, right, for us parents navigating this digital landscape. You know, how do we do this very hard thing, right? Where we're monitoring, we have to have these tools to monitor to keep our kids safe, but yet we also don't want to break trust with them. It's tricky. And I just want to call that out. It's very, very tricky. But I think if we keep in mind having the tools and the access to the tools to monitor while also with the intention of building trust, sharing with kids, I think it's always a good idea, explaining the reasons for the monitoring, being very real about the threats in an age-appropriate way, respecting privacy when it's appropriate, and like gradually increasing autonomy is always a good way to go. So one of the ways to do that in a collaborative way is actually called a privacy settings review. And what this means is this is an opportunity for you as a parent to kind of look through with another set of eyes, not just as a parent, but kind of thinking through how is a profile visible, right? Who can see this personal information? How easy is my child to access online, right? What is that digital front door? If somebody's searching for my child, how quickly could they find my child, right? And especially with social media, this becomes a little bit trickier because it's the onus again is on us as the parent to really monitor this technology, thinking through how visible is my child's social media profile if they choose to participate in social media, and then how do I know who's following my child's social media profiles, whether that's on Instagram or Facebook or now TikTok. Being able to have tools to manage that and be really well aware of who's following and friending your child is critical here. Also, location services, being able to kind of monitor and see what do those settings look like. This is a good checklist for you to be thinking through, right? Because when I say the word privacy settings, there's so much out there. These are the main components that you really want to make sure that you're crystal clear on having settings for. So third-party app permissions, another thing to think about that often as parents comes last. Auditing app access on a regular basis is highly recommended, right? Because a lot of times it's really easy for us as parents to accidentally download things that we didn't intend to. It's even more so for the kids, but the stakes are higher. So we want to be especially aware of all of that as well. Okay, so what about some self-reporting mechanisms? This is a good idea to kind of have in addition to some digital monitoring tools. So not only are you familiarizing yourself with built-in reporting functions on social platforms, you also want to have a physical net because you're working really hard to create a digital net for your child, which is wonderful, but creating and also fostering that off-screen net is a good idea because when the affects of digital technology impact the family or the child, it's a good idea for you to have that open net of a trusted adult network for your child, whether that be teachers or extended family or family friends. Good idea to always talk about that as we're also talking about digital tools and digital safety nets. Helplines, having handy contact information for cyberbullying resources, crisis support hotlines, calling 911 as needed, and online resources. Good idea to just go ahead and bookmark websites that offer guidance on online safety because it's one of those things that you'll just continually need support around and education around because the technology itself is developing so rapidly. And so then our needs to kind of keep educated about it are having to quickly keep up with that need and that want. A good one that I like to recommend is stopbullying.gov. Wonderful updated resource. They do a lot of hard work to kind of keep parents updated on all the new tools, right? And that comes especially with gaming. Oh my goodness, there's so much new stuff with gaming, and gaming in particular for me as a parent. I have kiddos that are very much into gaming, and I'm really out of my element with that. That is not a world I feel comfortable navigating. And having a resource like this website, it does a really good job to kind of translate a lot of this for me. And so I highly recommend that as well. Okay. Another part of this conversation that is really critical is about how to foster digital empathy. Now that we know that our kids are fairly safe as they navigate the digital world, we've done the most we can as parents to set up all the digital safety nets. They're online, they're using the digital technology. What is a way that we can ensure to make sure that they're interacting with this technology that is a thoughtful, mindful way to do so? One of the things that we have found that works best is just simply to utilize real-world examples, discussing news stories, the impact of online actions. Oftentimes, our kids are already doing this in school every day. It's a wonderful way to kind of have some of these conversations at home. I know in my family, we talked an awful lot about the election, the recent election, and the take that certain news podcasts might have a different take. What are they seeing on social media? They aren't on social media. So what am I seeing on social media? The viewpoint, that kind of a thing. And just having some of these conversations and being able to share in what that looks like. Encouraging your child to consider other people's feelings in these digital interactions is really important. I bring up the election because it's such a polarizing election. Having an opportunity to talk about one person's perspective and how they might share that online and how that looks different from if they were having a conversation with you, perhaps in a school cafeteria, right? Being able to have some of those conversations and just share what that looks like. Also highlighting examples of good digital citizenship in action. This is quite easy to do, believe it or not, because we already do this with our own social media feeds. If we're following positive stories, like if we follow, for example, animal sanctuaries, or I love to follow the Little Free Lending Library. I've used that as a positive role model for digital citizenship. I've shared an organization called Lasagna Love that was actually started on social media. And Lasagna Love is this wonderful organization that will just provide a lasagna to a family in need. There's no strict qualifications. It's just spreading the word. And they grew from this one little startup idea and spread like fire across social media. And now it's this wonderful organization that, in its own way, is reaching people digitally and providing a warm meal. So that's an example to look for, or how you can kind of foster groups around causes in the digital landscape. And then also just taking some time to reflect in general, prompting your child to think about their own online behavior. You know, what are they trying to get across and what are they typing out? Just having them think through that, or having a conversation about that that's proactive as opposed to just reactive, is always a good way to go. Because what it does is it gets them thinking about what they're posting before they post it. And it helps them to not think about it afterwards. And that comes into another skill set that is always really important for us as parents to be mindful of, supporting, and that's around building critical thinking skills online. Like, how do we do this work? Very similar in that we want to be teaching kids, and we want to just call this out, to verify information before they share it and believe it. And this is really easy to do because most kids, by the time especially they get to be the teenagers, they've already had experience with misinformation in some form or context. And so being able to tie it back to how that looks in their digital life is a really important consideration to make. And also discussing why people might post certain things online. What is the incentive? What does that look like? Is this a marketing decision? Are they trying to foster kindness? Is this an example of good digital citizenship? Why might they be saying the things that they're saying, or why might they be sharing what they're sharing online? And then also at the same time, considering consequences. What are the potential outcomes of digital actions before taking them? If you share this about so-and-so, what might happen if so-and-so reads this? And doing some of these really important examples before they happen, or talking through some of this, or sharing some examples perhaps from your own social media life is a good idea. Also, encouraging looking at issues from different viewpoints. Another really important factor to talk about. How might somebody be reading this, sitting at one side of the table, view that same post? And again, I go back to the election because that was a wonderful example for our family to build critical thinking, especially in a digital world. We use that a lot. There's a lot of examples, and as you kind of go through this and start to practice more and incorporate a lot of this digital etiquette, you'll find yourself doing it over and over again. For example, you can hear a story on the radio and think about how that might translate online. If somebody were to share that, might they add their own perspective before they share the story, right? That kind of a thing. So more practical strategies for positive online behavior. You can always ask, much like you do how school went, you can always ask about positive online interactions that your child had. What does that look like? If you're not asking about it, it can be really hard for them to know what they're supposed to be looking for. And also with your child, maybe reviewing digital footprints, discussing the impact of recent posts. This is especially important for teenagers as they're nurturing their digital life, making sure that they're aware that they do have a digital footprint and what that might look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, just having some of those conversations. And monthly, again, doing your inventory of updating your safety settings, reviewing new app permissions. And then this is just an ongoing thing, right? Celebrating and reinforcing examples of good digital citizenship. It's been really nice for me as a parent because I've been actively seeking out good stuff online, and I've modified my algorithm to actually share more good stuff. And that has been wonderful for me as well. So that's something to keep in mind. It's good stuff for everybody, not just the kids. Parents benefit too. So when we talk about digital footprints and the impact of this, one of the things we want to make sure that we're sharing with the kids is that they really need to think before posting. It's a lot of fun to just get in there and post. And I know I've talked a lot about social media, but the same can be said for texting, right? Thinking through before they share a text, especially in a group text. It's a good idea to have that conversation, not only before kids use devices, but as they are ongoing with these devices. Learned communication and appropriate communication is especially important. And then highlighting achievements and interests is a good idea too. Thinking about what they can put in there that is good, that is wonderful and encouraging. And then also encouraging meaningful online discussions, much like they would have and want to have meaningful discussions in the classroom with their friends. What does that look like online? Is that being healthy? Is that being unhealthy? And then also talking about sharing content that inspires or helps others. And I usually go back to my example about lasagna love. And then we have to bring up this screen time balance. The digital balance, I feel like personally, is just one of those things that we have yet to really normalize. There's necessary screen time, there's educational screen time, there's social screen time, and then there's entertainment screen time. And helping our children and frankly ourselves to really prioritize one over the other and kind of a good healthy mix of all of this, not just online, but also offline. We have to talk about it and discussing it in a way that shows priorities for balancing out our lives. This is a great way to do it. Talking about what's necessary, what's educational, what do you need to do offline, how might that interact with your responsibilities and your commitments is really important. Okay. And nurturing digital creativity. That's digital photography, video production, coding projects, blogging. There's so much exciting opportunities now for children to participate and to grow through digital opportunities that we often kind of leave that part out and we just go straight to social media. But there's a lot of wonderful things that kids can utilize digital technology to grow their talents with. And this is just a few examples. I know that a lot of our area schools participate in Lego League, and that's a wonderful coding program. Blogging, maybe finding some wonderful blogs that you think your kiddo might be inspired by and sharing some of that. That digital creativity is a really important component of digital life. So on the flip side of that, addressing online addiction concerns, right? Because if we want to talk about nurturing some of their passions digitally, we want to make sure, again, to always be mindful of that balance. So what does this look like? What are we looking for, right? We want to make sure that they're nurturing healthy habits. Let's not neglect offline responsibilities. Let's look for that balance being shifted out. Sleep deprivation because of their devices, irritability is a big one when unable to access devices, and declining interest in offline activities. Healthy habits, that goes back to establishing good boundaries. So setting device-free times and zones, especially around mealtime, encouraging a lot of diverse offline hobbies, and then modeling balanced tech use ourselves. Easier said than done, but probably one of the most important considerations. And then we can also use apps to track and limit our own screen time. Again, modeling that very important behavior. Okay, so how do we prepare for digital independence? What does that look like? We've done our best. We've done our due diligence. We've got the digital monitoring. We've created some good digital nets here, and we've got a fairly good balance. So as children become more independent, what are we looking for? We're looking for supervised access where we're monitoring, kind of guiding some online experiences, allowing more freedom with guided exploration, and then again, collaboration, involving especially your teens in setting digital boundaries is going to be really important. You have to have their buy-in, otherwise it's going to be wholly ineffective. And then mentored independence, and I love this phrase, mentored independence, right? Where we're really just kind of gently offering some advice while still collaborating with our teens as they navigate their digital lives. So key takeaways that I want you to have from this is that open communication is crucial here with these digital boundaries. Leading by example in our digital behavior is just as crucial because they're watching everything that we do and they're going to be the first to spot inconsistencies. And then again, because we are not only users, but right now we're in this position where we have to be regulators of our own tech and our tech for our kids. Staying informed about the online risks and the trends that are out there is going to be really important too. And then balancing trust with independence. So your next steps in your digital parenting action plan, go ahead and have that family tech talk. Just get it started. Schedule a time to talk about online experiences and go ahead and have a approach to starting to develop expectations around family tech use, and then go through and review your privacy and safety settings on all your devices and apps. It's really important that you not take so much time to invest in just one application, but that you try to do all of your applications. Don't leave anything behind. Really important. And then create a family media agreement. Again, collaborating as a family around guidelines will help everybody to feel like they can buy in to having healthy digital habits. And then also just as important, plan for digital free activities and adventures ahead. That regular offline family time is going to be crucial to helping you maintain balance. And that is all that I have in my presentation. So thank you very much for taking the time to learn about this very important topic.
Thank you, Emmy, sorry, for sharing such great information. We do have one question that was sent in ahead that I'd like to read. And the question is, what is the first step in setting up the settings on my device? So a parent wants to know, what's the first thing on that
Where to start? So most of the time, if you go into your phone's settings, like if you have an iPhone, you're going to want to peel through your settings and it will usually list something on there like screen time or privacy settings. Peel through there. Another good place to look is just Google it. How do I set up, screen time privacy settings on my iPhone or whatever your child decides to use? That's a good way to go. Accessibility, displays, home screens, there's all sorts of settings in there. And depending on your needs as a family, you can walk through what works best for you.
Thank you so much. That is helpful information. It's all very helpful. Just have one last little piece. Thanks again, Emmy, for sharing all this information with us. It was so interesting as someone who raised their children before the technology was such a thing, and it seems so important to be ahead of the curve on this. I love all your conversations and front loading that.
Yeah.
VFN,
this is the first generation, Marie. If you think about it, this is the first generation that is going to be native digital citizens, right? The analog doesn't exist for these kiddos. It's wild to think about.
It's a whole new world. It certainly is. Yeah. We have many more interesting workshops coming up, and you can find the details about these on the homepage of our website, vermontfamilynetwork.org, along with the links to the previously recorded ones. We have tons of information on our website, and getting connected with us is easy. You can follow us on Facebook or join our closed Facebook page if you're a parent. We have two closed groups, one for all parents of children with disabilities, special health needs, and one for those with adult children. You can also sign up for a monthly e-news or check out our YouTube channel. We're here to help. Please contact us by phone or email. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.